Good morning. We're live. Welcome. I'm not Sue, although this is Inside Scoop with Sue. I'm Kamira. Sue and I switched days this week. So she was on Tuesday and I am on Thursday. Thank you for finding me on a Thursday. Today we're talking with Carol Muleta about positive discipline. She's going to describe her 5 C's approach to discipline and how we can use that to build good parent-child communication. I'm just going to read a little bit about her for you. Carol is a parenting strategist and consultant. She was named the 2019 DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. She hosts the Parenting 411 show and was named Radio Personality of the Year at SpeakerCon 2019. She's a 4-time best-selling author, and she recently released Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom, and Gems from My Journey. Carol will be answering your questions live on air. If you have any questions, just post them in the comment section, or if you have comments, go ahead and post those too, and she will address them live on air. If you are watching us via a replay, thank you and welcome. You can communicate with others who are watching us via replay, but Carol will not be available to you if you're watching us via replay. But if you're live, please post your questions and comments. Good morning, Carol.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. And I want to apologize for looking down from the screen there early on. I just wanted to share the broadcast out to my platform, the Parenting 411. But thank you so much for having me.
And we welcome all of your followers who are now following us as we have this conversation. Okay, before we get into our discussion, I mentioned Carol's book. Can you show it to us?
Absolutely. See. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, my book is a mini motherhood memoir about my journey becoming a mom of twins and really going onto this course of being a stay-at-home mom when that wasn't really initially what I had planned. And that's just what our journey was. We also had some challenges with when we learned that our son had learning disabilities. And so just that journey in terms of finding his team and ushering him as well as his brother onto college, which is where they are right now. And so I call it a mini memoir because it's intentionally small, because it has 7 pearls of wisdom that really anchored me during my journey. But I also remember going when I had my children and they were going to different activities and my son had different appointments and things like that. I always like to have a book with me. And so, I always had something in my purse. And so a lot of times those books were big. And so this is a nice small book.
From a mom who also always had something to read with her, I appreciate that. Thank you. Something that we could carry along with the snacks and all the other things that don't belong to us but are in our bags.
Yeah.
Okay, let's begin with you telling us a bit about yourself, the Parenting 411, and how you got into this line of work.
Sure. So 21 years ago, I gave birth to twin sons, and it just really changed my life. I just had no idea how much. As I shared earlier, I certainly expected to head back to work in about 6 months. But once I got home, I just really thought that this was a time that I could make a change to something that would allow me to really be engaged and connected with my sons. Just wasn't sure what. I didn't know that it would take me in this direction. And then, as I said, during that first year, it was just a challenge getting accustomed to managing 2 and really just parenting, because I really hadn't spent a lot of time babysitting young children. I had younger cousins and people like that, but I never had to truly care for them for a long period of time. And so there was an adjustment to that. And then toward the end of the first year, we learned that our son had some developmental delays. And so at that point, I felt that given what we were going to need to do, at least what I understood at that point in terms of having him work with people that could shore up his skills, I just couldn't imagine someone else driving my child around for me like that. It needed to be me. And I'm so glad, because I really got a lot of great feedback and instruction and guidance from the professionals that worked with him so that I could work with him at home. And so I think that piece of working with him at home and really looking, having a close-up look at how children develop and how they acquire skills. And this was not only with him, but also his brother. I just became fascinated with it. And then as a parent, I also needed some skills, especially around would they turn those teachable twos. And so I needed to learn something more than no, no, no. And so I took some parenting classes with a nonprofit organization in our area, and their programs were rooted in positive discipline, which many of your viewers may recognize as Jane Nelson's adaptation of Adlerian psychology, which was originated by Alfred Adler. And so that approach to discipline really resonated with me. It was very rational to me, just the idea that as humans, we long to be connected. And that's what really drives our behavior. We long to be connected. We long to contribute. We long to know that we matter. And so when you think about children's behavior in that light, then you can see that not everything they do is intended to push your buttons and upset you. It's just them feeling around for those boundaries that we haven't effectively communicated to them. And so as I took those classes, I just was so fascinated with the psychology. And so the organization asked if I would like to train to lead courses for them. And so initially I hesitated. I said, no, I'm in the mode of learning. I don't have anything to offer anyone. And so over time, they said, well, of course, continue to learn. You should always continue to learn, but we think that you would be a good course leader. So after a couple of times of them approaching me, I did go ahead and do that. And so I started leading, I completed my certification with them about 16 years ago and began to lead courses. And then in 2009, I started a parent education company with another mom. And so for a few years, we conducted parent engagement programs and presented workshops for organizations in the community, based on our own philosophy, excuse me, also, rooted in positive discipline. And then a few years out from that, I started a radio show on Radio One's Baltimore affiliate. It's called the Parenting 411 as well on WOLB 1010 AM. And so that's really how I got into this work. And so my previous background was marketing. And so I think that helped me a lot in terms of even knowing how to present and teach my sons, to create materials that were interesting and engaging to them so that they would learn things. And of course, it informs what I do now in terms of figuring out ways to reach parents where they are, to give them the tools that they're interested in. I saw a survey that showed, it was done by Pew Research, that said that 73% of parents said that their lives began when they became parents. Wow. Yet 70% said it's the biggest life challenge they have. Mm-hmm. And so they're seeking information. And so that's really what I'm passionate about. I want to give them the skills so that they can help their children reach their full potential, and that their children can look back on their childhood and remember that they had compassionate, caring parents. Doesn't mean they were smiling every moment, but parents who were genuinely interested in equipping them to meet life's challenges, and so that they can look back on their childhood fondly.
That's great. That's a wonderful story. Thank you. I want to remind anybody who's watching us that you can place your questions or comments in the comment section, and we will pull them up and address them online. So feel free to join in the discussion. So we said we were going to talk about discipline. Let's begin with, and we want to hear about your 5 C's approach to discipline. But first, before we get into that, can you tell us the difference between discipline and punishment?
Oh, absolutely. So with punishment, there's that desire to make another person pay or suffer or experience pain
Mhm,
because of an action that they've taken.
mhm,
Whereas with discipline, there is the desire, just looking at the definition, to teach and to instruct and to guide someone, whether they've made a mistake or not. That's the beauty of discipline. It's not something that, comes to the table because something has gone wrong. It's really a way of life. I mean, it's a way of doing things and a way of conducting yourself to meet certain situations that you're in, positive or negative.
Okay. So we got that, everyone. We got a difference between discipline and punishment. We're not here to talk about punishment today. We're here to talk about discipline, specifically Carol's 5 C's approach to discipline. So now I'm going to step back and you're going to tell us all about that. D Walker says hello. Hi, D. Thank you for
Hello, Dee.
joining us. Okay, go, Carol. Run with it. Your 5 C's approach.
Absolutely. And I call them the crucial C's for discipline. And so, again, my personality has always been kind of connecting the dots kind of approach to life, very rational. Things had to really make sense to me. And so when I read a book, there was a book that I read when my children were younger. It was a book for parents of Black children, and it was called Sticking to, Watching Over, and Getting With. And so I'm telling you, that book is timeless, like it could have been written just the other day, because not only does it have a positive discipline principles, which of course that was something that I was interested in, uh, but also it talks about the context within which Black parents are raising their children. There are other things that we have to consider that non-Black and brown parents simply don't have to consider. And so, one thing I drew from that was that in the approach to discipline is very much depends and very much rests on a three-legged stool. Now, they didn't say that it's a three-legged stool, but that's what I say. And the legs are affection, protection, and correction. And so of course, if you take away one of the legs, the stool will not stand. So you can love them and lavish them and connect with them and, tell them you love them all the time. But if they don't understand that you are there to protect them, and establish boundaries to keep them safe, um, that love is not enough. And the same thing, you can be driven to protect them and keep them safe at all times, tell them what to think so they don't make mistakes. But if you're not coming from love, they're not going to receive it. And then correction. You can have all of those other things, but if you are not going to prepare them for the game of life, what is expected when they get out there in society, all of your emphasis on training is just not going to matter. So it's so important that those three legs are intact. And so when I think about my experience in parent education, both with the nonprofit organization, with my former company, what I've brought with me into my new work as the Parenting 411 are the crucial C's. There are 5 of them. And so the first one is connection. So your children really, really need to understand that you're genuinely interested in them as people, not just telling them what to do. And also, obviously the affection. And so, what I say there is that you've got to make room for the magic. And what I'm talking about there is being available. And I will be the first to admit that in the beginning, I struggled so much with it. I tried to stay, because I was using my business mind, and I had to stay 2 steps ahead of what these kids were going to need
Mhm.
instead of just being with them.
Mhm.
So I had to definitely learn to make room for the magic. And so obviously that's very important. This is a teen show. So let me bring it home. We've got to be there for them, not just in the next room, not just in the house, but they need to know, even if they're not interested in being with us right at the moment, that we are available if they need us. And so we can look for those patterns. There are times when they like to talk. There are times when they do want to go to their room and read, or they just want to be by themselves. But they often come down for snacks, and they often kind of wander, and they won't say, Mom or Dad, I want to talk, but they're kind of clinging to you or coming sitting with you. So notice those patterns so that you can clear your schedule so that you can just be around for when those moments are that they want to really talk. And then we've also got to constantly be looking and listening. And I say listen with your eyes and your ears, because you have to take in the whole picture, because their enthusiasm, their level of energy, the speed with which they're speaking, the volume, all of that can convey the message even better than their words. I mean, I believe it's an insane number, like 93% of communication is nonverbal, right? So you've got to pay attention to that. And so there is, you can create a way that we talk about doing that is having special time with them. So with your younger children, it's a lot easier, and you can often do it every day, like 20 minutes every day. But as your children get older and have longer school days, they have extracurricular activities and other interests. It may be an hour a week. But during that time, whatever it is, it's interactive. It's not, looking at a TV show where nobody's saying anything, but it's something where there's some back and forth. So when it's your children, you're playing a game they love, even if it's the 20th time that you've played it, you're playing by their rules, you're asking them questions, and it's in those moments that you can really learn things that you won't necessarily get by asking. Now, as my children got older, we call that hang time. And so, it was just talk about what they want to talk about, go where they want to go. And it doesn't have to cost money either. That's the important thing to remember. It doesn't have to be extravagant. And so the next crucial C is clear and concise communication. And so, of course, that entails the teaching, the training, addressing any questions, being clear about when you state boundaries or whatever, taking that time to be clear, because a lot of times we think our children should know things because, they have eyes, they have ears. Didn't they see this happening? So we forget that we actually should walk them through it. And that's a way we're investing in them. We're showing them that I'm betting on you. Like, I'm spending this time teaching you something because I know you're going to be able to use it. And so also, another part of the communication is acknowledging and affirming them. So acknowledging what they're feeling and, recognizing that there's no right or wrong feeling. It's just, and you can affirm their right to have that feeling. It's just, what do you do next? What do you do when you act on those feelings? That makes a difference, because that can impact you and it impacts others. And another crucial piece of communication, that clear and concise communication, is to empathize and encourage. So acknowledge, you're empathizing with where they are. I understand how you feel. I can imagine that felt really disrespectful when that happened, at school, when your teacher said that to you in front of your classmates or something like that. And it's also the use of when then statements and if then statements, letting them know, hey, I understand that you want to go out on Friday night after the football game with your friends. And as long as you're in by 11, which is what we've agreed on, have a great time and be safe. And so the next crucial C, the third C, is the compass. And that's where you're really defining the territory that they get to operate in. Because, rather than do it this way, A, B, C, because you'll find there's more than one way to do a lot of things. Okay. But there's some boundaries. There's some areas that you don't want them to go. So state that. And so, again, I just stated a boundary earlier when I talked about, 11 o'clock is what we agreed on, but, just show up then. be safe. Be safe. I mean, the rules about how many people can be in the car or things like that, because that's another boundary too. And so then the next thing that follows after they know the boundaries that they can operate within, then they can make some choices about what they can do because you've laid the groundwork. And so you're just communicating those options that are available to them and giving them agency to select one. Now, what parents need to remember is if it's really not an option, don't mention it because you can't get mad when they pick it. And so, and I learned that my children were actually younger. They were probably about 2.5 or 3, and I had one of my sons in the car, and it was the routine. I picked him up from preschool, and I'd say, "So, what are you on for lunch?" And he would say something exotic like lasagna or something that takes lots of time to make. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong with him. He is so spoiled. I mean, why would he ask me for lasagna? I mean, that takes, 2 hours or whatever. I can see he's just going to be unreasonable, right? And so then, right about then, I was taking the parenting classes. And so they had introduced the idea of choices. And so I said, okay, so I know what I have at home and I know what I'm willing to make. So when we got into the car, I was like, hey, so we're going to get ready to eat lunch and you can have hot dogs or mini quiche. Those were 2 things we had. And I knew he liked them.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, I want a cheeseburger. And I said, well, today for lunch, we're going to have hot dogs or mini quiche. Just let me know what you think. And I'm just driving. I mean, I was not even angry because I knew that that's all we were eating that day. And so, he tried it again, cheeseburger. And I said, well, let me know. You have time to decide. We're not home yet. And then I said it again. And he said, mini quiche. I was like, all righty then. And so I call that news you can use. In fact, I have a little series called News You Can Use because it's information that they can use to make a choice. And, and it also applies to their behavior. And, sometimes they make the right one and then other times they don't. And so there may be a task or something that you want them to do. And again, there's more than one way to do it. More than one order, more than one sequence. Do you care how the car gets washed, whether they vacuum the inside first or wash the outside? I mean, there certainly could be some ways that make more sense. Let them figure that out. At the end of the day, we need the family's car washed before you can take it out or whatever. So the last C is consequences. And that's where we allow natural or logical consequences of their actions to play out. And, sometimes that can be tough. But that's that difference between punishment and discipline. You're allowing the consequences to teach as opposed to some pain that you're inflicting on them to teach them a lesson for some mistake that they've made. So it might be how they manage their lives around, making sure that they complete their household jobs. Say, everybody should have a job around the house to keep it running. But and their extracurricular activities and things like understand you can be on this team, you can play this instrument, you can go here with your friends. But our family values education and your homework and your assignments need to be done. So like, an example is that when my children were in early elementary school, early elementary school, there was no TV during the week. And so, but then, as they were approaching middle school, it was like, well, as long as I see that the homework is being done, they can have, of course, there was still a limit of how much TV you could watch every day, but why not? If they have things under control, why not? And so what's interesting is that after they had that privilege of being able to watch TV and manage their schoolwork how they wanted to, turns out they didn't even really like TV that much, but we let them discover that for themselves. And that was a way of them, in fact, developing some self-discipline around TV. They decide how much they're going to consume of that. And so that's, self-discipline is really, really what we're looking for. We want them to be able to govern themselves. But of course, in the beginning, we have to set up the boundaries and the guardrails to keep them safe and to help them to focus and learn the lessons for themselves.
So I get that this is all we're taking steps towards self-discipline so they can govern themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I know that we have parents who are really stuck on that last C, the consequences, because you get these teens and consequences aren't as obvious as they are for the younger children. You can't just take things away from teens. And some of the natural consequences are dangerous or have long-term effects. So parents are very fearful of allowing some natural consequences. But I see on parenting boards, I'm sure you're on a lot of the boards and the groups and stuff, there's lots of discussion about what do I do about this when the teen keeps doing something that is against the family norm or rules or ethics or whatever it is. And it can be anything from stuff on screens to curfews to whatever. It can be seemingly benign in 10 years from now, or it can be something that is going to lead them down a treacherous path and you don't want them to go there. What are the types of consequences that we can, and I don't want to say levy because they're not punishment, but that we can steer them towards to help them learn the self-discipline?
Hmm. Well, again, certainly with the risky behavior and things like that, it's sort of, well, there's certain privileges that they're not going to be able to have. Like if you find that you get your car back, that your teen has had the car out and you find cigarette butts or you find beer bottles or something like that, then they're not going to be able to take the car out. I mean, certainly going to have to talk about that. And then also another thing too with teens is that it's really about problem solving. And so, and you start a little younger, you give them an opportunity to learn how to solve problems. And so you sit down and you talk about that. Listen, I know that it's important for you to be out with your friends and you know you want to be a part of the social scene and all of that, and we have these concerns. And so what, and then you brainstorm ways that their need can be met and your needs can be met. I mean, can we agree that you're only going to have three people, there'll only be four of you at most in the car, including you, the driver, to avoid distraction. Because, but yeah, can we agree on that? And then with same thing about, you shouldn't be drinking at all.
Yeah, that's a whole legal issue there.
That's a whole, yes. I mean, and hey, and definitely make them aware of those things. Like I can tell you, I can tell you, but this is what you need to understand. And so, so there. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, just to reiterate for our audience that we love the problem solving. I like that. Instead of looking at it as punishment for teens, which is not what we do. You can't just take things away from teens. You're at a different point. I love that problem solving as part of the consequences.
And can I mention something too? Another part of it. So it's the brainstorming. Throw anything out there. I mean, like nothing's off limits. Okay, but then you're going to pare those things down. Like, no, you're not going to take our car away for the weekend, and you're 17. No, that's not happening. But you can put that on there, but and talk through, but you talk through the different options. And then you try something. You try one. You can move forward with one, but agree that we're going to come back and take a look at how this worked. Okay. And then, if not, then we're going to need to go with this other, this other thing. Like we're going to try what you're doing. And if you demonstrate responsibility and care, then, this can be our new way of doing things. And if not, then we're going to come back to this other approach that we feel comfortable with. And again, parent and child need to be comfortable with it. So you're not saying, I don't like this, but I'm going to let you do it. It's like, well, we have to work through our concern too, as well as us meeting yours. So problem solving is way more effective at that point. And then you've had the discussion. You should also, I should say, talk about, well, what are we going to do if this kind of doesn't, like if a rule has been broken, let's understand that this is what we're going to have to do. Like, so understand that consequence. So they can make that, they know they're making an informed choice, whichever way they decide to go.
Back to that other C, an informed choice. We have a comment from Teresa. Teresa says, great advice and guidance. I agree. Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
When it comes to the brainstorming, thank you for pointing that out, the brainstorming, problem solving. That's not always in response to something negative that's happened. In our household, we had that recently where our teen presented us with an idea that frankly I wasn't ready for yet. And so we had to discuss it and brainstorm and find ways to both of us to be mutually happy. It was actually a family thing because everybody had differing opinions about this thing he wanted to do. And it was over time. So it may not be immediate parents. It could be over time.
Right. And you bring up a very important point that I think it can have a powerful impact if it's something that they want to do. And like, I'll use an example. I have a son, well, my sons both are in college, but one in particular wanted to drive back with one of his classmates back to school. This was a 15-hour drive. And, right off the bat, nope, not comfortable with that. And by, let's be real. My Black son and his brown friend were going to be riding down to the South, going through the South. I mean, really all through the South, down to Florida, where he's in college. And so, my husband and I had a hard time getting our heads around that. And so, we had to talk about, like, it's on the one hand, we were like, it's something great to do. He's, being independent, and, ideally that should be an adventure. I mean, a road trip and all of that. How can we make this work? And so we did talk about that in terms of checkpoints, calls. Let's look at the hotels along the way, so that if you all are tired, because they even worked out a game plan of how long each would drive to give each other a break. And so once they did that, and of course nowadays with technology, you can also send someone your route through Google or Waze or whatever. We were a lot more comfortable, as opposed to no way, because that was absolutely the way I felt initially. But that moment of like, how can we make this happen for you, coming from the parents? Like, you want, let's figure out how we can make this happen, can really, you're just really pouring into their dream, their vision for their lives, and you're helping them to be independent, as opposed to automatically saying no.
I love that. How can we make this happen? And we're pouring into their dreams. We're pouring into our teens who are going to be adults very soon, whether we're ready or not. We are at the end of our time. I always ask for one takeaway, the one thing, if it's the one thing that people remember, what should it be? I have two. I love the affection, protection, correction as the three-legged stool of parenting. Thank you for that. And the whole idea of problem solving and brainstorming around consequences. And I think that's going to help a lot of people. I'm going to use that when people ask for punishments, because I see a lot on these teen parenting or parenting of teen sites and groups. How can I punish my teen for XYZ? And it always rubs me the wrong way. So I thank you for that tool to share with other people. What is your one takeaway that we should have, that the audience should have?
Well, it absolutely is the three-legged stool that positive discipline rests on it, affection, protection, and correction. And I would also add that your very relationship rests on it. So definitely think of discipline within the context of your whole relationship, not just managing a child's behavior.
Thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Carol. I want to tell our audience that's it for today. But join us tomorrow. We will be here again live 10:30 a.m. Eastern time again tomorrow, Friday, where we'll be having another discussion that'll help you navigate the terrain of parenting and raising teens. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.